All right. Hello, hello, hello. How are you? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when and where you're watching this Facebook Live. This is the voice and the face of Dr. Olabintan, CEO and co-founder of Livingspring Family Medical Center here in the awesome city of Mansfield, Texas, where we help our patients live long and well because we believe the quality of life is just as important as the quantity of life. That is why we're having these conversations. All right. We're having this conversation today, and the topic is, Doc, how do I help my kids develop good habits? My words seem to be ignored by them. We're having some technical difficulty. I do have Dr. Ariam, our guest, in the background, so I'll pull her on. But if you're watching this live, hashtag live. If you're watching this in replay, hashtag replay. Let's see. How we doing? Can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes, I can
Yes.
hear you. Yes.
Yes. All right.
Oh my goodness. I was having a heart attack. I was just like, what's going on?
No, no. I was like, would use our phones. You use your phone if we had to, but I'm glad you're on. Welcome, 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 and thank you for coming on here. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much. Thank you to you. Thank you to your team. I'm so glad being here. And I'm so glad you're having me.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I was just introducing to our guests that we are having the talk, and the topic is, Doc, how do I help my kids develop good habits? My words seem to be ignored by them. So if you do not mind, can you kindly introduce yourself to our viewers? Who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Dr. Ariam Diaz. I'm a general pediatrician, board certified general pediatrician, and also a board certified in obesity medicine. And I've been a pediatrician for over 10 years. That's a milestone.
Yeah.
And I created the Good Habit Pediatrician, which is just if a weekly Facebook live that I have, especially for my patients, just to encourage good habit and building good habits to their kids. So I've been doing this, and it has been my passion, my pleasure, and I'm loving it.
Awesome, awesome, and I love your passion statement. It says that you're passionate about children, their well-being, and it had led you to discover how to help parents create a solid foundation in kids, and developing good habits that would help them thrive. I love what you do. I think I saw one of your posts, and that's why I was like, I got to get her on because she is
That's right.
amazing.
That's
She's
right. This
amazing.
this is my passion. I love working with kids. I've been working with kids even, I volunteer early on to church
Um,
activities to work with kids, and
wow.
and I love it. I love it.
Awesome, awesome. Now people are wondering why do you do what you do? What's the story behind it?
So the story behind it, to be honest, is I am a mom of three. That's it. I have a 10-year-old, 7 and 2-year-old, and of course, life gets very hectic, and you start thinking like, am I doing a right
Mm,
job?
mm,
Am I doing?
mm,
I'm not breaking my kids. Am I doing what I need to do in order for them to fulfill their full potential? That's what
mm,
every parents want,
mm,
to make
mm,
sure that the kids are living up to their full potential. So I was just struggling at home. I was just like, I was like this reactive parent that was always arguing with my kids. That's always
mm,
um, yelling why we're not doing this better or stuff like that. And that's when I realized like there has to be some other way to parent. This is not the right way to do it. So I started getting better and learning and growing as a parent, and I realized there is another way.
mm,
And of course, there is another way to teach our kids that they need to improve their skills
mm.
in a way that will build confidence as well, not just a way to bring them down or to break them down. So this is what I do. And of course, I've been also like practicing medicine in underserved areas for most of my medical time career, right?
Right.
So I've seen the struggles of these families. I see them really trying to do what they believe is good for their kids, but sometimes they forget or they don't have the tools, not the skills, the tools that
Mm.
will allow them to make their kids grow to their full potential. So this is what I do.
I love it. And your passion shines through.
Oh, thank
Your
you.
passion shines through. So thank you for what you do. And I know your patients are lucky to have you, blessed actually to have you. Um,
Thanks.
now, so I'm going to delve right to the first question. Is at what age can you start having kids develop good habits? Like when is a good enough time to
So,
say? Hmm.
Dr. Tolu, I was thinking about this question, and thank you so much for this question because it made me really think like, what will be the best answer, right? So I was just, you know, sometimes as parents we think like, no, my kid is too young to learn this, or it's not appropriately developmentally appropriate to teach this or that, right? But if you think as your life as a mother, right, or as a parent in general, just spend more time on earth being a parent than not being a parent. Like if you think about it, you like most of the time on average you have a kid by the time you're like 25 to 30, right? That's the average range. So you spend more time being a parent than not being a parent. When as soon as they give you this notice that, oh, you're gonna have a baby, what do you start doing? You start conditioning that baby. You get it, you create a nursery with the nice color palette, and you condition the environment for that baby to grow.
Mm,
Then you
mm,
go from feeding every hour to feed every 2 to 3 hours to feed no longer feedings at night, and then you start to the toddler years, you start feeding 3 meals a day. And
mm,
then the same thing with potty training, right? You already created massive, massive habits by the time your child is 2 to 3 years old. So there's not a specific age. It depends what is the habit that you want to for your kids to develop, right?
mm,
So if the habit is just the skill of self-confidence, you can induce that as soon as they're born, right? As soon as they're like 2 to 3 years old, you can start seeing and start putting you set a plan that will help your child develop. So the same thing by the time um, you already created the habit cue, right? The habit loop in your child by the time they're like 2 to 3 years of age. So that habit loop will be the same one that you will use all
mhm.
through your life. So there's not a specific time to start teaching your child. The problem is you just need to start. And you start early and you start young. I love that. I love I'm very passionate about my faith as well. So I love what it says, like train the child
The
when
one.
they're young. So you start young and you start as soon as you get your baby. So it's just a process. You just need to learn how to be consistent with it.
You just start. So for someone who's watching, who's saying, okay, so I just start. Where do I start from? Like what? So I understand. I've conditioned the house, so there's certain things will not stay around the baby, right? There's certain toys that will not be around because it could be hazardous to the child. Um, I have this little human being who's watching me. I'm not perfect, right? I'm not perfect. There's a
Right.
someone who's watching, a dad who's watching. Like I've made mistakes. I've yelled when I shouldn't.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person who's watching? Who's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't
Well,
like where do I go from there? Like
exactly. So
Mhm.
the first thing is you are not alone, right? So where do you start? You start with yourself. That's
Mm.
it. And I know it might sound easy or it might sound kind of like cheesy, but you start with yourself. Sometimes as parents, we just uh, get our time so overworked, right? And sometimes we forget that we as people need to grow and develop as well, right? Um, and considering that you are just learning as well, because you parenting is the road that you walk with your child. It's not a road that you learned before you had a child, right?
Mm.
Well, you have a child, that's your parenting trip, that's your parenting journey. So what happens is sometimes we forget that we are learning as well. So you start with yourself. You start you growing, you start you developing the skills that you want your child to also develop, right? um, Number one, like let's say I don't want to scream at home, I don't want to yell at home, I want to be more proactive and less reactive, right? So you are the one that has to change that. You have to change before you can see any changes in your child. um, and that, and that comes with a lot of practice. You start with you start growing, you start changing, and as your child see your growth and your change, that will change. For example, Dr. Tolu, I'm going to give you an example. um, my son, like I've been involved in a lot of master classes, and I realized like I needed to do more with my life and stuff like that. So my son, he is 10 years old, and because I started doing different things, you know, he adopted a different personality, a different identity, because I adopted a different identity. So now he wants to also be involved in the things that I'm doing, not because out of the bloom, it's because he's seeing me. So you model, you are the first one that have to change in order for other family members follow you. So you become intentional with your time, right? Most of us work full time and we think like, I don't have enough time with my kids. When am I going to teach them all these things? So the 30 minutes, the 45 minutes, the hour that you have with your kids, you become more intentional, and that time becomes more, it's more of a pleasure, because you feel like this is my time with my kids and this is the time that I have to teach them, and for them to see me the way I am, and instill in them confidence. So you start with you. And another thing, as parents, sometimes we forget something very important, Dr. Tolu, and is, um, and this might be also kind of cheesy, but you need to create your blueprint, right, for your family. What happens is if you don't have let's say you're a builder, right, and somebody comes and say like, here, just build me a house, whatever you want, just build me, build a house for me, I want a mansion, right? And then, time passed by, you build a house and they come back and the mansion is there, but they say like, I don't like this mansion, why do you build, this is not what this is not what I want. And you say like, you didn't give me any blueprint. So as parents, we tell our kids, you can do whatever you want, whatever you want. When you grow up, you decide whatever you want to become, right? But we don't give them the blueprint. We don't give them like, this is the way to do it. So this is when visualizations, this is where mission statements for your family, this is where vision board, your vision boards can work well for your family. Because if you don't have a mission for your family, if you don't have a vision for your family and for your kids, then what happens is society will dictate a vision for your family, and you will, and your family will be defaulted to a different blueprint, to a different template. So you have to create, what is it that you want for your family? Begin with the end in mind. And that's my number, my number one is you model, you change. My number two is begin with the end in mind. Meaning, what is it that you see your family doing? What is it that you see your child growing to be like? And then you model that things.
So you dropped a lot of gems here, and for someone who's watching who's like, oh my gosh, this sounds like work. This sounds like I got to sit down, I got to study. I wanted to highlight a few things that you said. One, start with yourself. Be gracious to yourself. Try to model the example that you want to see. Does that mean you're not going to make mistakes? You do, but what do? You apologize. I've had to learn, because even culturally speaking, parents are apologizing to children growing up was not a thing.
Exactly.
Have to learn to model like, I'm sorry, like I really mean it, like communicating with my body language and my gesture, not like I'm sorry, like I'm really sorry. and then we want to create a blueprint. So, and this is not to say you have to make something so fancy. You have a goal. I want to raise well-behaved kids. I want kids who are kind. So I'm going to model that, and we'll talk about that in conversations. We'll be intentional. So every day I have a to do today, meaningful time with the kids, discussion. What does it mean to be kind? And there are a lot of resources and a lot of
Exactly.
tools. You don't have to do everything yourself. You can Google today, like, and prioritize it. So if you see it as something that's important to your family, you prioritize it. And so the 5 minutes or 10 minutes or however much you can spend alone with your child, you
Exactly.
make the most of it because you're living intentionally, right?
Exactly. And that's why you need your blueprint, because your blueprint will tell you exactly what is it that you want to spend those 45 minutes talking about with your kids,
Mm,
right? But if you don't have any idea of the things that you want to teach them, then that's 45 minutes, that hour will just go by and you will be just talking about, oh, things that are not,
mm,
helping, or things that you're just watching TV, or it's stuff like that. So you need your blueprint. What is it? I want my kids to be well behaved, kind. I want them to be compassionate. I want them to be empathetic, vulnerable, right? So those are the things that you can teach. You can teach your kids to be anything, right? Every
mm,
single skill is learnable. It's not like they're just like stone. You just need to learn your kid personality. And I like that you say communication, because as parents, we dictate most of the time. We dictate, don't do this, don't do that. That's not the way to do it. So we tend to dictate their lives, right? But we don't communicate. And when we
mm,
start communicating and be more vulnerable, and let them see us the way we really are, we create connection. Once you create connection, then you can teach them whatever you want. So it's very important to communicate, to connect, to love, to let them know that they're loved and seen.
mm, mm. Now, my next question is this. Big thing with kids and even as adults, feelings, right? Feelings are the, oh, I felt this way, so how, and of course it's going to vary depending on the age of the child, but generally speaking, how would you encourage kids to do things in spite of their feelings? And because I like how do you teach that? How do you teach that?
It's like the way you put it in there, it's going to depend on their emotional developmental, right, age. And you have to be appropriate with this, because it's not an easy thing to teach to a kid, right? And you have to be patient, because what you can achieve with a 4-year old is not the same thing that you're going to achieve with a 2 or 3 year old or
Mm,
an older child, right?
mm, mm.
But the most important thing is, the same thing with modeling. You need to teach your kid
Ah,
your feelings as well. Sometimes I wake up and I say, like, oh, I don't want to go to work, I feel like staying home. And it's the same with them. They feel like, I don't want to go to school. Like, where are we what are we gonna do? We're just gonna have a sleepover, all of us here at home? No, right? So we need to see they need to see, like, we also have those feelings, we also have the struggle.
mm,
But what do? We push through those emotions, we push through these things. Dr. Tolu, I'm a fan of Disney movies, and I love Luca, because I think they put it so well in that movie, when one of the characters were trying to teach Luca how to ride a bike or something like that, and he say, there's a little voice inside of you that tells you you cannot do this, or you
mm,
cannot do that, and you just have to shush it out. You just have to say, stop talking to me and move forward, right?
ah,
So I love that they put that in there, because it's so true. The same little voice we as adults have in our minds, like, oh, our feelings, like, I don't feel like doing these, they also have it, but they don't know how to deal with them yet, right? So we are the one that need to help them see that even when you don't have a good day, your emotions cannot rule your life. Your emotions have a date, a time, and it's okay. Validate that emotion And
Hmm.
sometimes that's the problem. We
Yep.
just dismiss the emotion. We just say like, forget about it. You going to school. We all going to work. Like
Right.
there's no feelings in that. You have to validate. Now, why do you feeling that way? What's the emotion that you're feeling? And you can start that very young with a 2-year-old when they're throwing a tantrum. Just give them some time, let them rest, make that all the feelings are down now. Let's just talk about it now. What was the feeling that you were feeling? Were you sad? Were you frustrated? Were you angry? Name the feeling. Name the feeling because it gives you strength, right?
Mm.
Then once you name the feeling, the second thing you're going to do as a parent is why were you feeling? Why do you think you were feeling like that? Because that gives them validation and they need to be heard, they need to be seen, and that's very important for you to create that connection with your child.
I love that. Validate their feelings because it helps them feel heard, that you acknowledge that what they was real to them, and then you can
Exactly.
redirect. I love it. Um, Final question, and I already asked this earlier. So you have a parent here who's watching who said, I didn't do the things, or I haven't been doing the things, and I feel bad. I think, some of the outbursts or the behavior of my kids may be my fault. Um, what would you say to that parent who's watching, who feels a little like, man, I messed up big time. I wish I knew this when I was raising kids or when my kids were younger. What would you say to that parent right now who's watching?
And fairly common, don't lose hope. That's my thing. You love your child, right? This is your child. And it doesn't matter if he's like 2 years old, a
Mm.
newborn, and teenager, 24 years old, he's still your child. And the same thing that applies for a 2-year-old that needs to be seen and heard and throwing
Right.
tantrums applies to the teenager that is doing the same thing, right? So show them love. And for yourself, give I tell my parents, give you some grace. Parenting is not easy. And like I say, parenting is the road that you walk with your child. Parenting is not like all the things that you learn on books, right?
Right.
Parenting is you walking with your child. Like, it's the first time of my life that I'm this age and I have a child that is this
Right.
age. So you two are learning together. And yes, there's some things that sometimes we regret while we parent, right? Sometimes we feel like, oh, I wish I would have known this before. But there's still time. There's still time, right? You still have time, and it's. I love it when you say like apologize because sometimes we as parents don't apologize for our mistakes, and we think like they don't need to know that I made a mistake, but you need to come to a raw moment, to a vulnerable moment with your child, because that will teach them that they need to apologize as well and that they need to be vulnerable as well. And we're not perfect. Parenting is not perfect thing. It's messy, but it's done, when done with a lot of love, and with a lot of patience, it can be one of the most joyful things you will do in your life.
I concur. And get your support system. Don't have to do it alone.
Exactly. Yes. Very good. Get you a support system. Uh, Dr. Tolu, I immigrated from Dominican Republic. My family is not here. I've been here for the last 10 years? No, more than that. And I've been just with my husband, his family, and some friends. But that support system is so important. It's so important because if you don't have it, as a mom, it's going to be very isolated, and it's going to hurt you the long run. So you need to get a support system. That's right. Yes.
Yes, yes, and your pediatrician can be play a big role in that with linking you with. So I'm glad that you do what you do, Doc. And so people who are watching who are like, I like Dr. Ariam Diaz.
Oh, but
I love how she speaks. She seems, like it's obvious you're passionate about what you do, and people want to connect with you. Either come have you speak on their platform or to connect with you regarding their kids. Doc, where can people find you?
so at this time we have a Facebook group that is Ask Dr. Diaz, the Good Habit Pediatrician. You can join us anytime. We'll leave weekly Facebook Live, for parents, parents questions and stuff like that. So we discuss those things there. And currently I'm working on maybe just getting more out there and getting my own podcast and getting the information out there. I believe that every parent, I honestly believe that every parent needs to know that it's okay. Sometimes it's okay to, to break, kind of like not to break, but kind of like feel like I'm not doing a good job,
Mm,
even when you're doing a good job. And it's the most important thing that you can give to your child is to let them know that they are loved
mm.
and that they are seen and that they are heard. Once those three things are accomplished, you succeeded as a parent. That's it. You don't need anything else. You succeeded as a parent.
Mm, I love it. Seen, heard, and loved. I love it. Thank you so much for coming, Doc. I
Thank you.
I put your information here as far as where you are on Instagram, the Good Habit Pediatrician on Facebook, Ask Dr. Diaz, the Good Habit Pediatrician. I love your brand, by the way. I love that. This has been
I'm
so
so
good.
I'm so thankful. I'm very thankful that you gave me this opportunity. Thank you
Oh,
so
I'm
much.
I'm grateful to you, and I'm sure our viewers who will watch hashtag live and hashtag and replay will also share the same sentiment. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching. Remember, caring is sharing. Be sure to simply like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and forward this to family members, friends, and people you know who could use this encouragement in the form of this live. Thank you for watching. And if you or anyone you know is looking for an awesome and a thorough and a passionate family physician in the Mansfield, Texas area who will help you live long
He
and
is the
well,
best.
thank you, Doc. I am she. Have a good one, okay?
Thank you.
You.
Bye.
Bye.